All right, hello everyone. Welcome to today's IELTS class. We're going to get going here in a minute with the lesson of today, which will be focusing on task 1 of the academic IELTS. Hello Harjeet. Hello Sarabjeet, Prosafa. Hi for all of those who are joining right now. As I get going, the first thing I'd like to do, this is usually what I do, is just check the sound in the video. Can everybody see me okay? Can everybody hear me okay? Can all of you see me and hear me okay? Or at least see the board? I know I'm a little bit dark because I'm backlit. But the important thing is that you can see the board and you can hear me. Awesome. Okay, so audio is good, video is good. Here you're looking at our website, which is aehelp.com. This is where most of our materials come from. So again, this is aehelp.com. That's for academic IELTS. And today we are focusing on task 1. Today we have only one lesson. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have 2 lessons each day live on YouTube. Today, this is it. We're focusing on task 1. So if you... oh, Shilpa, nice. You got 7 on your exam. That's awesome. I'm so happy to see that. We're really, really happy always, me and my colleagues that work so hard to bring you these IELTS materials. We're always so happy to see our students succeed. So thank you, Shilpa, for sharing that with me. And congratulations. I'm very happy that you got your score. That's the biggest driving force behind our business. That's great. So again, for those of you students who are achieving these scores, great. I'm so happy for that. And for those of you out there watching this program, we have a lot of different ways that we help students with IELTS. These live streamed lessons are one. And of course, our flagship, so our big product, is our online course that we offer to students. It's a self-study course. You log in at the top when you have a full student account, and we will be looking at a task 1 example from our website today. So our website covers all parts of the IELTS, listening, reading, writing, and speaking. There's lots of different help for speaking with other students or with myself. And then we have 6 full practice exams, 40 lesson videos, and so on. So lots of help there for you, and of course a fully interactive course. Now, today we will be looking at IELTS Task 1, and we will be looking at 2 bar graphs. So talking about 2 bar graphs or writing about 2 bar graphs. If some of you are writing for general IELTS, we also have a website for general IELTS. It's at gieltshelp.com. I'll show you what that looks like here real quick. www.gieltshelp.com is the website. The layout looks very similar to our academic, but as you can see, it's a green background. So for those of you who are studying general IELTS, go to this website, gieltshelp.com. It's for general IELTS, and today's lesson is for academic IELTS. So again, I can't stress this enough. Task 1 for general IELTS is different than for academic. Task 1 for general IELTS is how to write a letter. And we will do general IELTS Task 1 live streams later on, probably sometime next week. However, it's still good for you to watch this lesson. Even if you're studying general IELTS, you will pick up vocabulary. It's good practice for your English listening. My accent is a Canadian accent, guys. I speak with a West Coast Canadian accent. Okay. Again, academic IELTS for today. So let me jump up here. So it's going to be a combination graph today. I'll show you the graph in a minute. So today, IELTS Task 1, bar graph, example, and strategy. Today's date. Again, our website's aehelp.com, academic IELTS. I'll even put it up here so you can kind of permanently see that. Okay. Of course, if you watch these live streams regularly, it's a really good idea to join our website so that you can get our practice exam books. That's usually what I use for these live streams, so you can follow with us a little bit more clearly, practice better when you have our books in front of you. General IELTS is www.gieltshelp.com. All right. And of course, if some of you just want to sponsor us with $1 or $2 and you have an important question, there is the super chat option. Not all of you have it. It's the little $sign beside the emoji in your chat. Thanks again for your support. I wish always all of you good studies. Again, a big congratulations to the students at the beginning of the class who wrote that they had passed IELTS with 7.5 and 7. Good job, guys and girls. I'm very proud of you. You should be proud of yourself, and make sure that you keep up the good work and your next steps in life, and keep reaching for your dreams. If you're interested in practicing live speaking interview on Skype with me, send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. I can give you information there. And you can also study with other students through our website. That's free. Of course, lessons with me you have to pay for. All right, so just a quick little review. I'm not going to go through each point every class. I want students who watch regularly to learn fresh materials. Begin studying for IELTS 90 days before the exam. That's the ideal state. So in a perfect world, you have at least 3 months before you sit your IELTS exam. And during these 90 days, you need to do a lot of different learning steps, including learning 3 to 5 new words each day, and spread them out. So don't say, oh, I didn't mention this in the last couple classes. I know, Satish, that Super Chat's not available in all the areas around the world, so that's okay. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. So if you learn, let's say, 20 words in one day, that's not effective. It's much more effective to spread it out. So if you miss learning new vocabulary on a day, don't try to catch up. I wanted to mention that. So if you didn't learn 3 or 5 new words today, you were lazy, you weren't studying, you just did something else, that's okay. But it's not a kind of situation where you can catch up. So you can't think like, oh, well, I missed learning vocabulary for 3 days, so tomorrow I'm going to learn 20 words. It's not a good idea. You have to spread your vocabulary learning for that to be effective. So don't try to bunch it up on one day. Don't say, hey, okay, vocabulary day for me is Friday, and I'm going to learn 100 new words Friday. Woohoo! You can try it. It's better than nothing, but good luck with that. Okay? I much rather see most of my students learning 3 to 5 new words each day. Okay? I'll say my email again, Satish, in a second, so don't worry about that. I'll put that up in a little bit. In fact, I can just show it to you like this. My email is adrian@aehelp.com, okay? If you want to send me an email. All right, so because task 1, especially for academic IELTS, requires a good set of vocabulary, I will show you an example of vocabulary learning with task 1 vocabulary, okay? So before we get into that, quick question. How many kinds of task 1 are there? So how many different types of graphs and charts are available for academic IELTS task 1? Hi, PS Studio. Nice to see you in class again. Hike, it's not 3. It is 6. Yeah, there's generally 6 different categories of task 1, and you have to be familiar with all 6. Okay, so just like I was explaining to you in speaking part 2, there are basically 5 different categories for speaking part 2 that you need to be familiar with. You need to be familiar with all 6 types of task 1 for the academic IELTS. Hi Satvir, good to see you again as well. Okay, so 6 types of task 1 possible. What are they? Can some of you list that off for me? What are the 6 task 1s that are possible. And you'll see my logic here, why I'm talking about this right now when we talk about the vocabulary. So yeah, exactly. Good job. So there's bar graph, line graph, pie chart or pie graph, table, flow chart, and diagram, which also includes a map. Okay, sometimes people think map is different. Diagram can be like a manufacturing process. So they show you how something is made, or it can be a map as well. By the way, guys and girls, there is a really good show, and you can find this on YouTube as well, for diagram language or for diagram English. It's called How's It Made? So this has some really good process language in it. Find it on YouTube. Okay, so this is just a little bit of a bonus point here for you. When you're learning about describing a process, so describing how something is made or what happens in step one, after that, next, third, finally, there's a really good show on YouTube. It comes from TV, I think Discovery Channel or something. It's called How's It Made? And basically the TV show is about how something is made, like coffee or a children's toy or a baseball bat or something like that. That's really good to watch to learn process language in English. Okay, so there are 6 types of tasks 1 possible. Why is this important? Why is it important to know that there are 6 types of task 1 questions on IELTS? Why is that important? So some of you might think, hey, Adrian's out to lunch. He's talking about all these little details and we're off point here and who cares that there are 6 different types? And I know a lot of you go to English classes and IELTS classes in school, and it's actually really sad that they don't teach you this very quickly in the beginning. It causes one of the biggest problems in task 1 writing for students. So why should I know that there's such a thing as bar graph, line graph, pie chart? Why is it important to learn this in the beginning? Why is it important to learn this about task 1 before I learn everything else? What do you think? Why should I know that there are 6 different... Yeah, that's right, Prosafa. To know the manner of each. Try to be as descriptive as possible. So to know the manner of each. When you're in university or when you're in school and you're learning engineering, you're learning psychology, statistics, anything like that, and you have to create a graph. And for those of you who have made graphs before know this, that different kinds of graphs are used for different purpose, okay? So this is a very important point, and the reason why this is such an important point for those of you who are taking academic IELTS is because it is the most common mistake by far that I see with students, okay? And that immediately drops your score. So the most common mistake by IELTS students for task 1 is they write about graphs in the wrong way. Most commonly or most often, students write the same way for bar graphs and pie charts and even tables as if it is a line graph. That's the most important or the most common mistake that I see. Okay, so many times students are writing about a bar graph or a line graph, and they write sentences like it's gradually increasing or rapidly decreasing. That's really weird, okay? Usually, in most cases, when we're describing a pie chart or when we're describing a bar graph, we don't use that kind of language. We don't use rapidly decreasing or gradually increasing. That makes sense when you're writing about a line graph, but it very, very rarely, almost never makes sense when you're writing about a bar chart or about a pie chart or a table. So you can't write the same way about a bar graph as you do with a line graph. Okay, so you need to first step understand why some graphs are used, and then you need to practice learning for each. So now that you know the wrong way to write about a bar graph, let's talk about the right way to write about a bar graph. So what kind of language do we use? And we're going to go back to our vocabulary learning here. So what is some vocabulary that we see in a bar graph? Because today we're focusing on a bar graph example. So what is a vocabulary that we use in a bar graph? Okay. What is some vocabulary that we use in a bar graph? And I'm going to put this at the top here where we were talking about vocabulary learning. So bar graph vocabulary. So let's have some examples of bar graph vocabulary. Don't stress too much about your scores, guys and girls. You will improve. Just follow these lessons. You'll do fine. X-axis you use, I think, for line graphs also, sure, because they both have x-axis, but sure, x-axis, yeah. Y-axis, okay. So this isn't specific to bar graph, so but you do use it with bar graphs. As opposed to, yeah, that's a contrast, but what is something specific to bar graph? So what is something specific? It's comparative, you're right, Prosafa. We might have the word legend in there as well. Often bar graphs will have legends. Yeah, sure. It's still not specific to bar graphs. What is a word? Can any of you tell me a word that's specific to a bar graph and you probably wouldn't use it on any other graph? Bar, okay, thank you. Yeah, bar is definitely specific to a bar graph. You probably won't use that for a line graph or a table. Okay, so pillar is a good synonym for bar. Yep, absolutely. So bar, pillar. Sure. What else? Process, probably not for a bar graph. Miriam or Maria, you probably wouldn't have it. Z-axis, you probably won't have one that complex, Sippy, for IELTS where you have to use Z-axis. Decrease, increase, probably not so much, but maybe. Okay, you might use the word decrease, increase. I'm still looking for some words of comparison that you haven't mentioned yet. Trying to give you a physical hint here. Not dipping. Bar graphs generally don't dip. Line graphs dip. Low, high, yep. That's getting better. So low, high. What else? Fluctuation sometimes, but it's more common for line graphs. Drop and climb, again, Prosafa, it's usually for line graphs, especially climb. Peak is okay, yeah. Peak is all right. Well, we might use that. All right, I'll give you a couple. So some that you might use is like taller or shorter. I'm surprised nobody told me these two. So one bar is taller than the other bar or shorter than the other bar. And of course, along with these, the shortest and tallest. Okay? So when we compare height, think about bar graphs as comparing height, right? So height comparisons. So shorter, taller, smaller, bigger. Okay, now I'm sure most of you know these words, so this isn't new vocabulary, hopefully for most of you. So let's go on to some new vocabulary that might be new for you. How about the word deviation? What is the definition of deviation? Yeah, peak can be used for line graphs, and that's why often we don't use them for bar graphs as well. So, what is the meaning of deviation? Anybody know the definition of a deviation? It's a very simple. Yeah, it's a diversion or a difference. Okay, it's used in statistics. Uh, it's a noun. Okay, can somebody give me an example sentence with deviation? And again, it's a very nice word to use in your task one. If you can use the word deviation effectively in your task one, then the IELTS examiner who's marking that will say, hey, great, this person definitely knows some good vocabulary for graphs and statistics. So what is what is a good example sentence with deviation? Standard deviation is when you're getting into even more specific statistics, haliesis, and it is good if you can see standard deviations, but you probably won't need to get that detailed in IELTS. When you're in university, definitely you will learn standard deviations and how those work, but I don't think for IELTS that will be too important, okay? So your sentence says the standard deviation between treatment and is high. So we can say deviation between x instead of difference between them in bar graph. Yes, you can. Yeah. I like ProSafa's approach. There was a significant deviation between sales in two cities. Now, again, remember that your example sentence should include you and it should be interesting. The deviation between my IELTS score last week and last year was more than 2 bands because I followed Adrian's live YouTube lessons. Okay, so a little bit of an egocentric example for you today, but it's one that's effective. So the deviation between my IELTS score last week and last year was more than 2 bands because I followed Adrian's live YouTube lesson. Okay, I'm blowing my own horn a little bit here, but you could show this on a graph. Okay, so it could be a graph that's showing your changes in IELTS band scores, and it makes sense. What did I do in this sentence that makes it more effective? So what is included in my example, which makes it an effective example for vocabulary learning? Why is this an effective sentence to learn vocabulary? Anybody? What's important when you're learning vocabulary? To impress the person. Yeah, so Sippy, it doesn't have to be impressing the person, but it just has to be emotionally powerful. So it has to be interesting in some way. And prosofa, yes, I'm using a conjunction. I'm using because, right? So it's a complex sentence. I'm making it a complex sentence. And of course, it's connected to me. It includes me because I have Adrian's live lesson here. It actually includes you because you're the student as well. So it's not to show Miguel that I have good education, although I, let's say, hit two birds with one stone using my example. Nevertheless, it is the effective way to learn vocabulary because it includes yourself. It's interesting, it's connected, and it's complex. I'm using the cause and effect subordinating conjunction of because. And then one of you mentioned paraphrase that, right? So, yeah, absolutely. Then 1 or 2 weeks later, I want to paraphrase this. So, I want to open up my little book and say it another way. So, can somebody paraphrase it? I don't want to give you all the information. I want you to work as well. So, can somebody paraphrase this sentence for me? Can somebody write this sentence in another way? The deviation between my IELTS score last week and last year was more than 2 bands because I followed Adrian's live YouTube lessons. Can somebody paraphrase this? Can somebody say it another way? Can somebody say the same sentence using different grammar, different words, expressions, and so on? So anybody, again, I see PS Studio checking out if anybody wants to join up for speaking. That's great, PS Studio. So I encourage all of the students to find speaking partners. You can do that with each other on Skype. You can also do it on our website. Student partners are absolutely free. Just one thing, guys and girls, when you're linking up for speaking is please, please, please keep your personal information private, okay? So please keep personal information private. Don't share your home address. Be very, very cautious, okay? And of course, do it at your own risk, but do be careful with personal information, talking about specifics in your life and so on. So be careful with that. Okay, so Halisa says, I got a better IELTS score due to help from Adrian. Yes, that's okay. Between the marks I got from last week and last year, one was better because, okay, that's okay. There's some grammatical mistakes in their pros office, so you'd want to review that. Because I used to follow Adrian's live YouTube, my IELTS grade deviated as compared to the first attempt. Yes, absolutely. Sure, that's a good one too. I always say don't start the sentence with because. Generally in English, there's kind of a awkward rule that we avoid starting sentences with because. So in this case, start it with since. Since I, what's another way to say follow? Anybody? Okay. So there is a paraphrase using some grammar and so on. Take after is different, Ilias. Take after means a different kind of follow. Take after, like if I take after my father, who is also a teacher, then I follow in his footsteps. Okay, so that's a different type of follow. In this case, the phrasal verb or verbal verb phrase keep up is better. Since I kept up with Adrian's YouTube streams, my IELTS score deviation was more than 2 points from the previous year to last week's. Okay, that would be a paraphrase of the sentence. Okay, so that's how you learn vocabulary. That's the word deviation. Deviation is a great word to learn for IELTS, for bar graphs especially, useful in other types of statistics as well. So make sure that you learn that vocabulary. Again, this vocabulary is available on our website in your course. So when you're in your course, you can study this. Now, here we have what's called IELTS Task 1 Writing and Task 2 Writing editing services. So we offer help with Task 1, Task 2 Writing. If you're wondering what kind of a score you would get for your Task 1 or Task 2, again, just send us an email or contact us in the on the website. You can click on this blue Contact Us button there, or you can send me an email and then just attach or copy paste your Task 1, Task 2 into the email, and I will gladly assess your Task 1, Task 2 score for free. So I will tell you what you would get on your writing work. But if you want detailed feedback for your writing, if you want comments, corrections, and tips on how to improve, then you have to use our Task 1 writing services or Task 2 writing services. These are 6 cents per word. So if you have 150 word Task 1, then that's $9. Okay. Now, here, hopefully I can find a good bar graph for you. Let me see. Okay, I think we've done the maybe city visitors. Yeah. Yeah, so we did one in the past that compared rainfall between Victoria and Seattle, and this time we'll do number of visitors. So let me see if I can. Okay, let me see if I can get this a bit bigger for you. So here we have 2 bar graphs. Okay, we'll look at both of them in a second. So here's the first bar graph. The first bar graph shows visitors to Seattle. Again, this is Task 1. Task 1 is 150 words minimum. So you need to write at least 150 words to get a band score of 7 or 8 or more. If you write less than 150 words, then it starts to become difficult to get the higher band scores in IELTS, okay? So this is coming directly from our website, and here the question is, now I know that the font can get a little bit smaller, so the question is, the graphs below show the number of visitors to 2 cities in a given year. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant, right? So we have to make comparisons where relevant. So we have our bar graph. The first thing, of course, that we pay attention to is that this is a bar graph, not a line graph. So we have to be careful with our choice of vocabulary. And then here we have visitors to Seattle. And then here we have visitors to Niagara Falls in our second graph. Okay, so what is the first step? So I get to my IELTS writing, I get to task 1, I get this question, I see that there are 2 bar graphs that I need to compare. What is my first step? What should I do? What is my first step in IELTS task 1? Rupinder, please don't force me to ban you, especially if you need IELTS. It's only a click away. Okay, so rewrite the statement, introduction, paraphrase the question, highlight the key features. That's what Saint Kai says. So he says, highlight the key features. What do you mean by that? So what do we mean by highlight the key features? Aditi, if you write more than 150 words, you will actually get a higher score. So I tell students that if you want to get for sure a good score on task 1, you should probably write close to about 180 words. Okay. Okay. Choose your key points. I always, Satish, I always give people one second chance. I always give people 1 second chance. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we have a bad day. Sometimes we think something's funny when it's not so funny. So I always give people a second chance. All right, so highlight the key points. Yeah, absolutely. We want to highlight key points. And let me see if I can do this with an annotation for you. So highlight the key points. What a lot of students do, and again, it's a big mistake, is they just start writing their answer and going step by step trying to figure out the comparisons. You shouldn't do that. So what you should do is you should highlight the key features. So what is a key feature here? So what is something that I can highlight here? What is a key feature that I should highlight as one point of comparison? Introduction and overview will be together. We'll get to the structure. We'll get to the actual example. But before, okay, so highest and lowest months. Yeah, absolutely. So here we can see that in visitors for Seattle, the highest month is definitely a tie between July and August. And the lowest month, it looks like, is January. Okay, and I'll probably get the mouse for this as I think it will be easier for me to do this work than the touchpad. So just give me 1 second here. Okay, I will be hooking up the touch screen for the projector this week, so it'll be a little bit better for this kind of work, but just bear with me. All right. Let's see where that mouse is. Okay. So definitely number 1 is the highest and the lowest. Okay. What else? What else should I be highlighting? So number 1, highest, lowest. Okay. And I can do the same thing for, of course, I can do the same thing for visitors to Niagara Falls. So visitors to Niagara Falls, the highest is also July and August, so here. And then the lowest here are these months here, January, February, and October. Okay, so those are my highest and lowest months for visitors to Niagara Falls, visitors to Seattle, and then what should I do after? What else? So I got my highest months, I got my lowest months, then what should I do? Okay, guys, I see that a few of you have had enough of Ruping Singh, so I'm just going to ban him. Just give me a second here, so I have to go into YouTube and move away from the lesson. So this is the other unfortunate part of students who do this, that it takes me a minute now to ban a student. I have to find him and then ban him. So just give me a minute, guys. I'm just banning a user here. I have to find him, and then all of his stuff will be deleted here in a second. Uh, just a lot of people. Okay, I think the user's left, so we don't see him here. Okay, so I don't see him during the current users, but if it comes back, I'll have to hide the person's comments. At least now I know how to do that. Okay. Okay. Okay, so hopefully that'll help some people be a little bit more professional about the class. So let's see if that works. All right, so back to the lesson. Sorry for those of you who weren't patient enough. I was just taking care of some inappropriate commenting there. It's unfortunate that people have to waste their time like that. But anyway, so back to task one. Okay, here we go. So we're comparing the highest points and the lowest points. Okay, yes, highest points, lowest points is good to compare in both. Sure, so that's step one. Step two, what's the next point of comparison? So what else should we compare? And this is what you're doing when you get to task one before you start writing. So I'll make a note of that here because we will write the example essay. So let's go here. Before you begin writing, you must identify 6 to 8 points of interest. Okay. Now, we identified two. We identified high and low. So let's see what other points of interest we can identify. So what else can we do? What are other points? So we got highest and lowest. What else? Okay. So what else are we comparing? Highest, lowest? Similarities, absolutely. So what is something similar? What is a similarity that we can compare between Seattle and between Niagara Falls? Yeah, absolutely. Overall pattern. So in the overall pattern between Seattle and between Niagara Falls, what is similar? Well, we can see just visually the similarity of a continuous increase of visitors from January to July. So this increase we can talk about. So that's 0.3. Absolutely. And you see the same thing here in Niagara Falls. Okay, so here we can see the same thing. There's also an increase of visitors. Okay, so that's a good 0.3. So that's our 0.3. Okay, what else can we compare? Well, we can also see that there's a decrease after July, so after August. So here we can also see that one of the other similarities is a decrease here. Okay, so that can be our 0.4. Now these are all separate sentences, of course. So there's 0.4, and then here is our other comparison of 4 here. Okay, so that's 4. All right, that's our 0.4. So good, yeah, absolutely, Utsav. The decrease after August. Okay, and then what's our next point? Satish, if some of the text isn't being delivered, it's because I've also added a filter. So I just put a filter in where anything that YouTube is suspecting to be inappropriate is getting flagged and held. So you have to be very careful how you choose your words now. Okay, the difference, right? So we have to look at the difference. And the difference here is this section here, right? There's a jump in December in Niagara Falls, as where Here, December is one of the lowest months. Okay? So we have to make that comparison of that difference as 0.5. What else is different between Niagara Falls and Seattle, or visitors in Niagara Falls and Seattle? Can anybody see what else is different? Maybe if I zoom in a little bit. So can anybody see another difference? Visitors to Seattle versus visitors to Niagara Falls. That's right, Maria. The number of visitors. Can you be a little bit more specific? That's right, Utsav. Can you be a little bit more specific? What do you mean the number of visitors? How do we know that? What gives us that information? So what gives us the information that the number of visitors to Seattle versus Niagara Falls is different? That's right, Raya. So the number of visitors are different on the y-axis. So these tables actually have different types of y-axis, okay? So the y-axis for Niagara Falls goes from 0 to 4.5 million, and the visitors' y-axis goes from 0 to 2.5 million for Seattle. So you have to be very careful about what's on the axes, okay? You don't want to make the assumption that the axes are same. If you miss that when you analyze this task 1, you could be in trouble. It could mean the difference between a 6 versus a band 7. So now let's write the introduction and the overview. All right. So here we go with the introduction and the overview. Okay, so going back to our question here, the graph below shows the number of visitors to 2 cities in a given year. The given year is 2012. Summarize the information by making comparisons. So the given year is 2012. So what you want to do is you want to take that information and you want to report it more specifically. Okay? So it goes like this. And you can say bar charts or bar graphs, just stick to one or the other. Now notice that I don't say these charts, but I actually say these 2 bar charts, okay? Using specific language like that, adjectives and adverbs are very important for task 1. We describe what we see. Now never assume information, just report it. This is an expository essay. So these 2 bar charts depict, and there are a lot of different ways to say show or represent. Reveal is okay. Depict is another way. So Karthik, Lytton, yes, those are good synonyms. So these 2 bar charts depict the number of visitors to 2 cities. This is an additive or descriptive clause here. Niagara Falls. Actually, I want to look at this because I want to have the right order. So Seattle's first, so I want to say that first. So 2 cities, Seattle and Niagara Falls in each month, January to December in 2012. Okay, what should I write anything else in the introduction or the overview? Yep, same time tomorrow, PS Studio. The class will be starting at noon. 1 class tomorrow. So make sure you join, and you can catch up with this class on the live stream, okay? So you can see the class after it's done recording, about an hour after. So the two bar charts depict the number of visitors to two cities, Seattle and Niagara Falls, in each month, January to December, in 2012. Notice how I'm using very specific language. So I'm being specific with the cities, I'm specific with the number of charts, I'm specific with the months on the y-axis, and then what else? Okay, so Utsav says both Seattle and Niagara Falls are famous tourist destinations. Don't write that because that's an assumption. Even though it's true, you don't want to write information that's from your brain and that's not in front of you. Okay? Write something simple. The overall shape of these bars represent clear similarities in the trends of visitors throughout the year. However, let's make this a nice complex sentence. However, the y-axes indicate a clear difference in the actual number of visitors. Okay, so if I want to write a 9 level or 8 level task 1 response, this would be my overview. Okay, now I'm using very big fonts. It's going to be a plural mismatch there. So the overall shape of these bars represents clear similarities in the trends of visitors throughout the year. However, the y-axis indicates a clear difference in the actual number of visitors, okay? So that would be a perfect or a close to perfect overview introduction for these bar graphs. Now, if I highlight this, I can tell you the total number of words. So far, that's 54 words, okay? And again, 30 to 50 words is what the overview should be. Now, what comes next? The analysis or analyses. Okay. In the analyses, we're now looking for those points that we discussed earlier. So we discussed that this here, the highest and the lowest, okay, should be our point number 1 and point number 2 for discussion. Yeah, I'm using a semicolon there because I'm joining two sentence elements that are different but share some of the information, okay? So now we're going through points 1 to 5. That's right, absolutely, that wandering nomad. We're going through 1 to 5 for the analysis part of the essay, okay? So here we go. Let's start working on that. So point number 1 and point number 5. So point number 1, can somebody give me a sentence for this? Can somebody give me a sentence for point number 1? Tomorrow I'm going to focus on task 2 writing, Aditi. So task 2, which is the same for general and academic. So make sure if you're a general student, you watch that one tomorrow, okay? Again, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS, all right? Reading class will be probably on Friday. Okay, Aditi, so if you're looking for reading, go for Friday's class, but it's a good idea to follow every class. Okay, anybody, point number 1, what should I write for this point there? Okay, obviously it's 2 million people. It's the month of July and August. So let's write about that. Yeah, I'm using a superlative here, right? So highest is the right word, Karthik. Okay, so clearly the highest number of visitors to Seattle are in the summer months of July and August at 2 million. Okay. Sure. What can I write next? So I write about the lowest. What do I write next about the lowest? Lowest is going to be this one here, or these two here. Okay, so what do I write about January and February? Don't compare it yet, Raya. I would probably write about one first, then the other. So a much better strategy, Raya, is write about the points 1 and 2, about one graph, then write about points 1 and 2, which are the highest and lowest for the other graph, and then start to make comparisons between the two graphs. Okay, Litton says the highest number of visitors. So again, I wouldn't compare the two yet. I would just compare. So this is an important point here. Make sure that you compare within the graph for a comparison and contrast before you compare between the graph, okay? So within the graph before between the graph. It makes more sense. Yeah, exactly. So while the lowest number of visitors are in the winter months of January and February, or Karthik, whereas January and February are the lowest months in Niagara Falls. At how many? How many people visit Niagara Falls in Seattle? How many people visit Seattle in January and February? Roughly 250,000. Careful with information mistakes. So Sulav, you said 25,000. It's 250,000. Okay? So that's the better way. And I think one of you has 2.5 million there, which is also too many. So make sure you have the right number of zeros. So here, I want to give the contrast. Conversely, the lowest number of tourists to Seattle are in the winter months of January and February, comma, roughly. What's another way to say 250,000? What's another way to say 250,000? Little synonym here. What's a different way to say 250,000? And I'm telling you this because it's important to use this. That's right, Raya. Very good. A quarter, or prosofa, good. A quarter of a million. Yeah, and that's the kind of vocabulary expression that gets you the high marks in your IELTS, okay? So clearly the highest number of visitors to Seattle are in the summer months of July and August at 2 million. Conversely, the lowest number of tourists to Seattle are in the winter months of January and February, roughly a quarter of a million people. Now I can talk about Niagara Falls, okay? So at the same time, Niagara Falls also experiences the highest numbers in July, and August at how many? Let's have a look. So again, now this is, and I notice it's kind of funny, but I don't actually even have to rewrite these numbers here. I just have to swivel my page a little bit because our point 1 and our point 2 lines up with Niagara Falls, except we do have to be careful because we have point 2s also on the other end there. So if we go back, you have to be careful of the highest and lowest here. It's a little bit different. Some points there. So here we could say Niagara Falls also experiences the highest number in July and August at how many? 4 million, right? So more people. Visits, okay? So at the same time, Niagara Falls also experiences the highest number in July and August at 4 million visits. Similarly, it has low tourism in January and February. Right? So January and February here at 500,000, right? So similarly, it has low tourism in January and February with just 500,000, or another way to say 500,000 is, what's another way to say 500,000? That's right, 500,000, right? So with just 500,000 people. Visitors. Okay. Now, what should I write after this? So what is a good sentence to write after this one? If I go back to the graph here, I don't want to forget about this. This is an important point here. So what should I follow? So I've mentioned the 2 here. I should also mention in addition, 500,000 is half of a million is okay. Orkun yields. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in addition, it also has low visits in October and November. Yeah, so it's different from Seattle, so we want to mention that, right? It also, and if you want to be very clear, you can actually state it. So in addition, Niagara Falls also has its lowest number of visitors in October and November. This is different from Seattle. Okay, great. All right, so I've done that. Now what can I write? So I've written that point 1, that point 2, the highest and the lowest. I'm focusing on just the key points. I don't want to write about all the other ones. So a lot of students will start talking about how many visitors in April or May or so on. I don't want to write about that. Okay, that's wasting time and valuable word count. So what do I want to write about after talking about these highest and lowest points for the 2 graphs? What's the next step? So app says Niagara at the end witnessed sudden increase in visitors in December, whereas Seattle not. Yes, so I want to start talking about those differences. Sure, I think that's a good one to write about. Absolutely. The patterns. Yeah, that's right. Wandering Nomad says, let's start talking about the patterns of the bar chart. Saad, there are lots of other types of charts and task ones on the channel. So subscribe there. Of course, you can join us on our website, ahelp.com, for lots more there. And I will do other types of task ones in this week as well. So I will talk about pie charts and other types. Okay. So I want to talk about the overall pattern. Okay. I want to talk about the overall pattern. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Arkan, I'm already at 152 words, so I probably only have about 50, 60 more words to wrap it up. So I don't want to waste too many words or too much time here. So I want to talk about the overall pattern. Okay, and we talked about that. So we said that our point number 4 should be this overall pattern. Okay, so that one, and then of course when I move this, it kind of lines up the same. So you can see how that pattern generally stays the same on both. Okay. Apps World, a big difference today in general and academic IELTS. You will not have this kind of question in general IELTS. In general IELTS, you'll be asked to write a letter to a friend or an employee or a boss or something like that. So it's letter writing for task 1. That's one of the big differences. Okay, so let's talk about that overall trend. So, and we can keep it in the same paragraph, all right? One of the distinct commonalities between these two bar graphs is an upward trend or an increasing trend of the number of visitors from January to August, followed by a decrease. However, Niagara Falls does have a large number of visits in December. Okay. Which is not the case for Seattle. So, however, take that line off for you guys so you can read a little bit better. So, however, Niagara Falls does have a large jump in visitors in December, which is not the case for Seattle. Now, if you're writing for a level 9, you can get into more details here, so you can say the exact number, but I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, let me see what some of your comments are. So, Govinder Singh says the number of visitors to Seattle increased significantly from January to August. And remarkably, there was a dramatic change in the last month in December, and Niagara was 1/2 and 2 million. Yeah, the response there, Raya, to Apps World, absolutely. So you take the academic IELTS usually for university application, and general IELTS is usually for immigration. That's one of the big differences. Okay. All right. So sticking with our essay here. Okay, we're coming kind of near the end of it. So we've talked about the big similarity, which is the general trend between the two, and then one more sentence before we write the summary. That Wandering Nomad, yeah, you should have 3 paragraphs. You should have the introduction overview, which is 1 paragraph. Then you should have the analysis, and then you should have a short summary. Okay, not a conclusion. It's better to think about it as a summary, Karthik. If you practice Yield is at home, then you will get better with the time management. One of the important steps to do is to indicate your points of comparison before you start writing. One of the ways that students waste a lot of time for task one is they just write without labeling the points that they're going to write about. Okay, so let's jump back here. Remember, we said one of the big differences between these two are the total number of visitors. Okay, so total number of visitors here, the graph is on 4.5 million, but the total number of visitors here is just 2.5 million. So it's a difference of nearly 2 million people. So it's almost double. Okay, so this is just 2.5 here. So that we want to mention. And you can kind of see that generally speaking, the total number of visitors is pretty much double. Okay, so here we can see that Seattle's 2 million, and here Niagara Falls for those peak months in the summer are 4 million. Okay, so that's what you'd want to discuss really quickly. So even though the trend looks the same, the actual number of visitors for Seattle is roughly half of Niagara Falls. Of course, Niagara Falls being a world tourist destination because of Niagara Falls itself, the natural wonder. So here we go. One distinct difference, let me try to be fluid and coherent here. So however, Niagara Falls does not have a large jump in However, Niagara Falls does have a large jump in visitors in December, which is not the case for Seattle. Another distinct difference, another obvious difference when looking at the y, or when comparing the y-axes, axes is plural for axis, is that Niagara Falls receives roughly twice the number of tourists in each month as Seattle. Okay, so that's my last sentence for that comparison, and then we go into the summary. In summary, and what can be my summary here? So what is a good way to summarize this? Yeah, so Post Office says, in general, the two cities have similar trends in increase and decrease except the last month of December. Yeah. Sure. Seattle policy doesn't make visitors' mind to divert towards it. So at the last quarter of the year, visitors decrease simultaneously, whereas Niagara Falls attracts visitors towards it. Apps World, I highly recommend breaking that into a couple sentences. It's quite confusing, quite a few grammatical mistakes. Satish says both cities have fluctuating number of visitors. Yeah. So different fluctuations in visitors at different times of the year, or different levels of popularity, sure. Yes, you should have a task one summary. It makes it more valuable than if you just have an overview. So in summary, both Seattle and Niagara Falls have similar peak and slow tourist seasons, with the exception of December. Also, Niagara Falls caters to twice the number of visits as Seattle. Okay. So some of your summaries that you wrote up there, I think they're good. They're great. I like them. They're very similar to mine. This is mine here. In summary, both Seattle and Niagara Falls have similar peak and slow tourist seasons, right? Their peak seasons are in July and August, and their slow seasons are generally the winter months, okay? So both Seattle and Niagara Falls have similar peak and slow tourist seasons, with the exception of December, because we already talked about that Niagara Falls has more tourists in December. Also, Niagara Falls caters means accommodates or attracts in this case, to twice the number of visits as Seattle. I saw that question, Satish, so that's what I'm answering there. Okay, let's have a look at how many words we have here. Okay, remember my font is quite big, so you can clearly see it. So my total number of words, according to Microsoft Word, is 252, and that's with analyses and summary or conclusion as well. So this is 250 words, okay? It is possible to write this in 20 minutes. It's maybe a little bit much in my case, so I could probably cut this back a little bit, closer to 200 or 220. I challenge you to do that. If you want to do an interesting exercise at home, you can see how you can decrease these number of words. But again, remember that this task is asking you for a minimum of 150 words. That means that even to have a chance of getting a band 8, band 7, band 9, those higher bands, even to get a chance at that, you have to write at least 150 words. Yes, there is a time limit. It's 20 minutes. If you write only 150 words and you have a lot of mistakes and missing information, there is no way that it will score a band 7 or 8 on the IELTS. That's the other trick. So you have to get to at least 150. I strongly suggest trying to getting to 180 to 200. This is maybe a little bit long at 250 words. It's maybe on the long side. But if you're good in English and you practice this at home, and I've seen students do this, they can get to 200, 220 words in the 20 minutes and get a good score. So it's not impossible. Now, quality is more important than quantity. So it's better to have 150 words written well than 250 words written poorly. Okay? So quality is better than quantity. Okay, let's just review what we wrote, make sure that it makes sense. So these two bar charts depict the number of visitors to two cities, Seattle and Niagara Falls, in each month, January to December in 2012. The overall shape of these bars represent clear similarities in the trends of visitors throughout the year. However, the y-axes indicate a clear difference in the actual number of visitors. So my summary here is a little bit of a paraphrase of that with more specifics. Clearly, the highest number of visitors to Seattle are in the summer months of July and August at 2 million. Conversely, the lowest number of tourists to Seattle are in the winter months of January and February, roughly 250,000 people. At the same time, Niagara Falls also experiences the highest number in July and August at 4 million visits. Similarly, it has low tourism in January and February with just 500,000 visitors. In addition, Niagara Falls also has its lowest number of visitors in October and November. This is different from Seattle. One of the distinct commonalities between these two bar graphs is an increasing trend of the number of visits from January to August, followed by a decrease. However, Niagara Falls does have large jump in visitors in December, which is not the case for Seattle. Another obvious difference when comparing the y-axis is that Niagara Falls receives roughly twice the number of tourists in each month as Seattle. In summary, both Seattle and Niagara Falls have similar peak and slow tourist seasons with the exception of December. Also, Niagara Falls caters to twice the number of visits as Seattle. There's a little bit of redundancy there, but most of it is just paraphrased. It makes sense. It will definitely get you a score of 8, if not higher. That's roughly what you have to do when you compare two bar graphs, okay? Don't get lost in really small details, all right? Okay, guys and girls, that's the class for today. I'm going to cut it short today. Apology for those who had to wait while I figured out how to filter some of the rude comments that a student put up there. Unfortunately, it does happen in the world. It's too bad, but that's what the world's about. We're all human, and it just takes one bad egg to spoil the rest. So it's too bad for that. Hopefully that won't happen too often. Again, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. This was an example of academic IELTS task 1. Please be careful that you are applying to the right IELTS exam. If you are going for school, then go for academic. If you're going for general, for immigration, then make sure it's the general version. Very welcome for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I appreciate your attention and your effort to improve yourselves, improve in English, dream big, reach for those dreams. I'll have another class tomorrow at noon Central European time, so same time tomorrow. And we will be looking at a task 2 example tomorrow with an example and some strategy. Thanks a lot, guys, for your positive support. I appreciate that. Much love to everybody. Have an awesome rest of your day, or have a great night. And be sure to visit our websites. Again, this information is taken from our websites. I'll put that up there. Keep up the good work, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.